Welcome to the Gentleman Scholars Club. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at how to button a double-breasted jacket. This may seem very straightforward. After all, we do learn to button our clothes at a young age. However, part of the appeal of the double-breasted style is that you can vary the way it looks by adjusting the buttoning in subtle ways. So if you're new to double-breasted jackets, I'll be talking about some of the basics, the buttoning permutations. If you're an expert and you already wear a lot of double-breasted jackets, I'm hoping to still provide you a few advanced techniques to give you some ideas. So let's get started. So we'll start with the most common type of double-breasted jacket you're likely to find available ready to wear, and that is the 6x2, 6x2, 6/2. That means there are 6 buttons, 2 rows of 3 on each side, and 2 of the buttons are functional. So there are 2 buttonholes here. Before I talk about the external buttoning, though, I want to mention a button that you actually don't see, which is very important. That's called a jigger. The jigger is located on the inside of the jacket, and you don't ever see it because there's an additional buttonhole on this side, and the jigger fastens that way underneath the flap of the jacket. I think it might be straightforward as well to button this. However, it is not. The reason is if you button this the normal way you'd button a jacket or any other type of button, you'd simply do this, right? You take the button, take the hole, and slip it through, and that would be the easiest way of doing it, sort of a natural way of doing it. However, if you do this, it creates a flap. Right? When you pull this over, this piece of material underneath will fold with this jacket, and it creates sort of a lump underneath the jacket, underneath the top flap. Whether you see this or not is open to debate. However, I do notice it, especially with thicker fabrics. If you're thinking about a linen, for example, like a heavy Irish linen, you may see that additional folding going on. So what you want to do is not to button it the way that feels the most natural, but to button it the way that prevents the flap from forming. So what you do is you take the button and put it over the top of the flap, like so, and then you put it through from the top to the bottom, or from the front to the back. Right, so it looks like that. You don't actually see the button on the outside here. And then when you close it, there is no pulling of this under flap, right, or this under layer of the skirting material. As you close that, it gives you a smooth sort of finish. Right, so buttoning the jigger is the first thing you have to think about when buttoning double-breasted jackets. And if you want to create the most formal look, you will button the jigger. Now, on the outside of the jacket, if you have a 6x2, 6/2, you want to think about this as being similar to a single-breasted jacket. If you have a single-breasted with 2 buttons, you always button the top button. Same thing applies here. You have 2 buttons, kind of envision this as a single-breasted, ignore the other side, if you will, and just button the top. Easiest way of doing it. You can also imagine it as a 3-roll-2 jacket, where 3 buttons, where 1 button is under the lapel, which would be your third button up here. Right, so you have 3. In that case, if you have a 3-roll-2 single-breasted, you would still button the second button. So same story, whichever way you want to envision it. You can imagine it as a 2-button single-breasted, button the top button. If you imagine it as a 3-roll-2 jacket, you'd still button the second button, the second from the top, which is sort of this extra button here. Okay, so this has the jigger fastened on the inside, top button there. And that creates the most polished look, the most formal look for double-breasted style. Now, variations on that. First, you can leave the jigger button open. And what that does is kind of loosen things up. Right? I don't know if the difference is noticeable. You can tell me in the comments. But sort of sprezzatura way of doing it, a more casual way of doing it, is not buttoning this inner button. And I'm just wearing it now for you over a few seconds, a few minutes. If you wear it through the day, you might notice more of a difference, right? The flaps just aren't held as cleanly together, so it leads to a more of a casual look. Looks like you're more relaxed. I find that sometimes looks sloppy, especially around here, because when you fasten the jigger, you're pulling it more closely, and you're closing it up and leading to more tapered sort of look with more waist suppression. If you leave the flap unfastened on the inside, it might be more comfortable, also more casual. So that's one permutation of the 3/2, 6/2 double-breasted style. Another thing you can do with or without the jigger button closed is to button the bottom as opposed to the top. All right, so you're leaving this open here, and the lapel goes all the way down to this bottom button. And they're actually 6x1 or 6/1 double-breasted as well. And you're sort of emulating that style if you button the bottom button. Right, and this really leaves the flaps kind of open to flop around. Not a huge fan of it, but really relaxed, kind of super casual style with a double-breasted. And with double-breasteds, you often want to downplay or dress down the jacket because a double-breasted is very formal, right? In a business setting, it's a power jacket, right? So if you want to wear it in more casual ways, you can fasten it at the lower button, which leads to this sort of flap hanging open. The problem with this also is that the lapel doesn't necessarily roll to the button. It's designed to roll to this first top button, right? And if you fasten it at the bottom, the lapel profile does not roll smoothly to that bottom button. Now, Caraceni, the noted tailoring house in Milan, has developed a double-breasted that is transformable. It's called the doppio petto transformabile, in which case they've designed the lapel so that you can button it either at the top for business wear, or you can switch to buttoning the bottom for after work. And they've designed a special lapel so that the structure folds to either button smoothly. Of course, bespoke and more costly than your ready-to-wear off-the-rack item. But having this bottom button fastened would be another option if you want to do a casual thing. It's up to you whether you think it looks sloppy or whether you think it looks fine. And you would never button both of these, just wanted to mention that. As with a single-breasted, never button both buttons. You always want to leave that bottom one open or the top one open if you want to go with the bottom as the one that you fasten. Now, lastly, I want to mention not buttoning the jacket at all. And I've seen that a lot this year on the internet. I'm not sure it's because of climate change where people are feeling hot. And in the summer, they're leaving the jackets open. See it mostly in the summertime. And that is an issue with double-breasted jackets in the warm weather, is that you have this extra flap of material, right? You're putting 2 layers of material over your shirt, whereas with a single-breasted, you only have that one lighter, smaller sort of underfold. So what I've seen on the internet is people opening it, leaving it like that. I find that kind of tricky because it leads to a kind of a large square skirting that happens around here. It makes you look blockier, makes you look square. Looks like you have a larger skirt down here with the fabric. Double-breasteds already have that, so usually you want to try to minimize it and kind of keeping everything as closely fitted as possible. It can be done. I've seen it done successfully, mainly with lighter fabrics. If you have a heavy linen fabric, if you have something like this, which is a fairly thick wool, it can lead to that boxiness and that sort of heavy skirted look. If you have a really airy, light material and it's closely fitted to begin with, maybe like a hop sack, then you can give it a try. However, when I have seen it done successfully, the photographs tend to be taken with someone's hand in their pocket, both hands in the pocket, 3/4 angle, right? So I'm thinking that it doesn't look terrific except if you manipulate the photography. So let me know in the comments whether you find the open double-breasted to be appropriate. Personally, I'd say no, but all rules are meant to be broken. If you find it works for you, then by all means, that will be another way of doing it. So button permutation number 3 or 4, whatever we're up to, not to button it at all. So in addition to the 6/2 double-breasted and any other combinations with 6 buttons, we also have the 4-button double-breasted, and I will show you that now. All right, so this is a heavy Irish linen 4-button double-breasted from Spier Mackay. I'm going to show you how to fasten this up, some combinations. So first I want to fasten the jigger button, and I'm doing it from the top or the front to the back as opposed to underneath with the button facing outward. Right, so I'm going over the top of the flap and buttoning it through so you don't see the actual button here. Because this fabric is Irish linen, it's really thick. if I buttoned it the other way, it would create this large flap that would fold over underneath the top layer, and I think you would see that, and it would look sort of sloppy, or not as slick as it could look. Not as sleek, not as slick. All right, so I'm going to take the top button again, similar to the 6 button. You're buttoning the top button with the top, the buttonhole with the top button here, and closing that up. So the 4 button, by definition, is more casual than the 6 button, generally said to be unacceptable for the formal workplace. This is made in Irish linen, has a patch pocket on the chest, both of which enforce that casual after hours aspect of the 4 button. This is a 4x2, a 4/2, where there are 4 buttons and 2 of them are functioning. Right? You can also button the bottom one, similar to what we were showing before with the 6 button. Again, that leaves you with an open flap, a longer lapel line, and the 4 button already gives you a slightly longer lapel line and less formality because it lacks that top button for ornamentation, and also the buttoning point is a little bit lower in this case. But you can really lower it by going down to the lower button on the 4x2 and leaving that flap open. Again, I find it kind of sloppy. As you can see there, it opens up, but it's supposed to be the ultimate in louche, relaxed, rakish, whatever. But I think the 4 button, by definition, on its own, already has that quality of being relaxed. So I would just button the top as my personal recommendation. But if you want to play around with sprezzatura and different combinations, you can certainly do that bottom button instead of the top one and see what you think. All right, so that's 4x2, 4 buttons, 2 fastened, as opposed to the 6/2, 6 buttons, and 2 being fastenable. So which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the standard or more conventional 6 button double-breasted? Do you like the 4/2? 4/1, would you be interested in the 6x1? Let me know in the comments what your preference is, as well as whether you like to have, whether you like to play around with that bottom button in a double-breasted jacket. If you enjoyed that and found it useful, like the video and follow us at Gentlemen's Scholars Club for more of the same. As always, thanks for watching.